Asset building for community revitalization. Asset building as a community revitalization strategy explores how accumulating resources beyond just income can positively impact individuals and communities. The text examines various studies that demonstrate the beneficial effects of asset ownership on personal well-being, economic security, civic engagement, and even children's development. It highlights the importance of policies and programs that facilitate asset building, particularly for low-income populations. The document suggests that fostering assets like savings, homeownership, and education can be a crucial tool for community revitalization and addressing societal inequalities. Key takeaway messages from this document. Here are the key takeaway messages from the document. 5. Asset building.pdf. Asset building is an emerging theme in community revitalization that focuses on developing potential resources in a community beyond just financial capital. It includes talents, skills, organizational capacity, political connections, buildings, and facilities. The term assets is used broadly, encompassing both private and financial holdings, as well as the personal, social, economic, and community effects of asset holding. The underlying proposition is that households and communities develop not only by income, but also by savings and asset building. This approach is considered a valuable guide to social work practice from theoretical, statistical, and empirical confirmation. Sheridan, 1991, suggested that individual development accounts, IDAs, matched savings for purposes such as education, home ownership, and small business development, are a sound infrastructure for asset building. Many states and the federal government have adopted or considered programs based on this idea to help low and moderate-income individuals build assets. Research suggests that asset holding has a variety of positive effects at the individual and community levels. Personal well-being. Studies indicate positive effects of assets on life satisfaction and self-efficacy, and negative effects on depression and alcohol abuse. Assets appear to be associated with being self-directed, intellectually flexible, and future-oriented. Research also suggests assets have positive influences on health throughout adulthood and old age. Economic security. Research suggests a relationship between assets and economic security, with assets helping to ensure welfare receipt among low-income people and helping reduce perceived economic strain. Home ownership appears to have positive effects on savings and the development of home values. Civic behavior. Evidence suggests positive effects of assets on recycling behavior and involvement in block associations and other neighborhood-level activities. Home ownership is linked to residents being more likely to maintain and improve their residences and having a greater stake in their neighborhood. Women's status. For women, assets are associated with higher levels of social status and improved material conditions, and there's a noted relationship between individual and joint ownership of assets and less domestic violence. Access to credit and asset programs can also improve women's economic status and reduce their vulnerability. Children's well-being. Studies show that parental assets and children's well-being have positive effects on self-esteem among adolescents. Parental home ownership and value are linked to positive outcomes for children, including educational attainment and reduced likelihood of dropping out of school. The implementation and evaluation of IDAs and other asset-based community revitalization initiatives are critical. Future research should focus on the effects of asset holding on personal well-being, economic security, civic behavior, women's status, and children's well-being. Evaluations of asset-building initiatives need to account for potential alternative explanations and the complex, long-term nature of the effects. It's important to understand not only if positive effects occur, but also the mechanisms through which asset accumulation leads to well-being. Further research is needed to understand the nuanced effects of different types and levels of assets on various outcomes and across diverse populations. Longitudinal designs are particularly important for understanding the long-term impacts of asset building. 3 Lesson learned from the document. Here are 3 key lessons learned from the document. 5 Asset building PDF. Asset building extends beyond financial capital to encompass a wide range of resources within a community. The document emphasizes that asset building, as an emerging theme in community revitalization, considers not only financial resources, but also the talents, skills, organizational capacity, political connections, buildings, and facilities present in a community. This broader understanding of assets includes both private and financial holdings, as well as the personal, social, economic, and community effects of asset holding. The underlying idea is that development at both household and community levels occurs through savings and asset accumulation, not just income. Holding assets is associated with a multitude of positive outcomes for individuals and communities. Research highlighted in the document suggests that asset holding has beneficial effects on various aspects of life. These include improvements in personal well-being, such as increased life satisfaction, self-efficacy, and a future-oriented outlook, as well as reductions in depression and alcohol abuse. Assets are also linked to greater economic security, helping to ensure welfare receipt and reduce perceived economic strain. Furthermore, asset holding appears to foster positive civic behavior, like increased recycling and participation in neighborhood activities. For women, assets are associated with higher social status and improved material conditions, with a potential link to reduced domestic violence. Finally, parental assets have positive effects on children's well-being, including improved self-esteem and educational attainment. Rigorous research and evaluation are essential for understanding and improving asset-building initiatives. The document stresses the importance of evaluating the implementation and effects of individual development accounts, IDAs, and other asset-based community revitalization efforts. Future research should delve deeper into the mechanisms through which asset accumulation leads to positive outcomes across different domains and populations. Evaluations need to account for alternative explanations and recognize the complex and long-term nature of the impacts of asset building. Longitudinal studies are particularly valuable for understanding these long-term effects and the nuanced impacts of different types and levels of assets.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into something pretty fundamental, asset building.
That's right.
And when we talk about assets, I think it's important to say up front, we're not just talking about cash, right? It's bigger.
Exactly. We're looking at skills, social connections, even things like community infrastructure. It's a much broader picture.
You shared some really great research on this, and I think our goal today is to, unpack how building these different kinds of assets can actually lead to real positive changes for people and for whole communities.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is how it pushes us beyond just thinking about financial wealth. It's about what really empowers people.
Okay, so let's dig in. First up, maybe the most personal one, our own well-being.
Yeah.
How do assets, in this wider sense, affect us individually?
Well, the research suggests a pretty strong link between holding assets and better life satisfaction. Mm-hmm. Also, a greater sense of what they call self-efficacy.
Self-efficacy. So like feeling you can actually make things happen in your own life,
right,
that you're in control.
Precisely. That feeling of agency. Some key studies, one from back in 1990 and another in 96, found people with more assets tended to report more of these positive feelings.
So it's not just having stuff, it's this feeling of capability it gives you, a foundation.
Exactly. And that 1990 study, it went a bit further. It suggested assets are linked to people being more, self-directed, thinking more flexibly, being more forward-looking.
Optimistic even.
Yeah, it's like having that buffer lets you take a longer view, maybe invest in yourself more.
That makes a lot of sense. If you're not scrambling day to day, you've got more headspace to plan and, bro. What about physical health? Is there a connection there too?
There seems to be, yes. Research from the mid-90s found a positive link between assets, especially things like owning your home, having a stable income, and better health.
Better health throughout life?
Yeah, through adulthood and even into older age, like 65 to 84.
Wow. So owning a home, stable income, it could actually mean a healthier life. Is it just the stability or maybe like being able to maintain your home better, live healthier?
That's a great question. It's probably a mix. Stability definitely cuts down on stress. But yeah, homeownership might mean more investment in the living space itself, which impacts health directly.
And what about stress directly? Did the research look at that?
It did, and it's a bit complex. But some studies suggested that for low-income families, having assets might actually lower stress.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
Well, the thinking is it provides more financial security, maybe less reliance on others when times get tough, a safety net.
So even a small cushion can make a big difference in stress levels for those facing the most instability.
That's powerful. Okay, let's pivot slightly to economic security itself. How do assets help there?
Oh, Marilyn. No surprise, the link is strongly positive. One of your sources had a table summarizing this. A key thing is assets acting as that buffer, that safety net during hardship.
Like helping people avoid needing assistance.
Exactly. For instance, research showed low-income entrepreneurs with some assets were less likely to need welfare. They had something to fall back on, giving them more resilience. Makes sense. Having your own resources means less reliance on emergency support.
Right. And other studies pointed to how homeownership, specifically, can lead to higher home values over time, but also seems to encourage more saving.
So it creates a kind of positive financial cycle.
Seems like it. And the benefits don't always stop with the individual either.
Ah, right. It can ripple outwards.
Yeah, to family members,
Yeah.
things like helping out financially. So building assets can actually have a multi-generational effect.
Okay, now this next one feels less obvious, but maybe just as important. Civic behavior. How does having assets affect how we engage with our communities?
It's a really interesting link the research suggests. For example, one study found homeowners spend more time and money fixing up their places compared to renters.
Suggesting a greater investment in their immediate surroundings. Makes sense if you own it.
Precisely. And that sense of investment seems to spill over. Other research found homeownership is linked to more participation in things like block associations, neighborhood activities.
So having that literal stake in the ground encourages getting involved.
It appears so. People seem more active in shaping the community and connecting with neighbors when they own their home.
And it's not just about keeping the block looking nice.
No. Another study found homeowners were more likely to get involved in, say, volunteer recruitment for community things, a broader engagement.
So building personal assets might actually help build stronger community ties.
Yeah, one researcher, Galster, made the point that more homeownership could really boost the overall upkeep and, well, the vibe of a whole neighborhood. A tangible community benefit.
Fascinating. Okay, let's shift again. How do assets play out specifically regarding women's status?
The research indicates that for women, having assets tends to correlate with higher social standing and better material conditions. Access to things like credit seems key here.
Credit and chances to build assets.
Yes. Those seem particularly important for unlocking other forms of empowerment, both economic and social.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Some studies suggested that when women get access to financial resources, it gives them more agency, more say. Other research linked credit programs to things like increased contraceptive use and just a greater overall sense of empowerment.
That's really significant, potentially life-altering impacts.
It really is. And another study even found a correlation between women owning homes and having less tolerance for domestic violence.
Wow. Suggesting assets can provide more security, maybe more independence in difficult situations.
That seems to be the implication. Greater safety and autonomy.
Such powerful connections. Okay, thinking about the future now. The next generation. How do parental assets affect kids?
Well, the research strongly suggests positive effects. When parents have assets, it seems to boost children's self-esteem and their overall well-being.
What kind of outcomes are we talking about?
Things like educational success. Several studies found a link between parental assets, especially owning a home, and kids doing better in school, facing fewer sort of vulnerabilities or challenges.
So it provides a more stable launchpad for them.
Seems like it. A more stable, supportive environment for their development. One study even noted higher schooling levels for kids raised in families that had income coming from assets, not just wages.
So the positive impact echoes across generations.
It really seems to.
It sounds like there's definitely a growing awareness then of just how important asset building is. You mentioned some ongoing work.
Yes, absolutely. There's a real movement to understand this better and support it. Things like evaluations of IDA programs, individual development accounts.
Those are the matched savings accounts, right? Yeah. For specific goals like a house or education.
Exactly. Designed to help lower income folks build assets. And it's not just small programs.
Bigger institutions are involved too.
Yeah, major players like the Ford Foundation have even reorganized to focus specifically on asset building and community development. That's a big signal.
It really shows this is being recognized as a key strategy for change.
Definitely. And the big question driving all this research is what we've been talking about. Do assets really cause these positive effects for well-being, security, civic life, women, kids? And if so, how and when?
Right, because correlation isn't causation, as they say. While these connections are encouraging, we need to be critical, don't we? Could other things explain these outcomes?
That's a crucial point.
Mm.
Always important to consider alternatives. Maybe people who are already doing well are just more likely to acquire assets in the first place.
So well-being might lead to assets, not just the other way around, or it's a cycle.
Exactly. It's likely a complex interplay, which is why the research really stresses the need for longitudinal studies.
Following people over time.
Yes, tracking individuals and communities over the long haul. That gives us a much clearer picture of the cause and effect, how asset building actually influences outcomes over time.
So after looking at all this, what's the big takeaway? What's the core message from the research?
I think the main point is that building a wide range of assets beyond just the financial things like skills, networks, community resources seems incredibly important for improving lives.
For creating stability, opportunity, connection.
Exactly. And it improves things across many different dimensions.
And it feels like it's not just about individual success, but it could be a real strategy for strengthening whole communities, too. Like that source title suggested, asset building for community revitalization.
Precisely. When the individuals in a community are more secure, more engaged, have more opportunity, the whole community benefits. It lifts everyone.
Okay, so yeah. And while we know more research, especially those longitudinal studies, will deepen our understanding.
The current evidence really points to supporting asset building as a valuable way to foster positive change for individuals and for communities.
It's been a really, really insightful deep dive. It makes you think, doesn't it? Considering all this, what are some maybe innovative ways communities could really lean into supporting the accumulation of all these different kinds of assets? Not just money, but skills, connections.
That's the big question moving forward.
What kind of impact could that kind of broad focus have on our future? Definitely gives us a lot to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.